Hi.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello. All right. So we're a little later than our usual scheduled time. One of those long weeks. Thanks for joining me, Christina. So today we're going to talk about Pete Seeger. He is a folk music legend, also known for his civil rights advocacy. I know him for his involvement with cleaning up the Hudson River. Back in the days, he was a big-time activist, anti-war activist, musicologist, lots of music studies. He made a lot of old folk songs really popular. So I'm sure if you're listening to this, it's because you know Pete Seeger and you're a fan as well. So we're going to move to the estate side to see what did he do for his estate. He died in 2014. I think his wife had predeceased him, but he still had several children. He was 94 when he died. And what we learned is that he did leave a will. And in his will, he did two things. He set up trusts for his children, who are adults, and he did specific bequests. And when I say that, I mean that he left certain very specific musical instruments to all of his grandchildren. So, for example, let's see where I found it. His long neck 5-string banjo went to one of his children, and then his musician grandson got another banjo, all these very famous things. But ultimately what we read about is that Pete Seeger really lived a humble life, a modest life. He didn't have a large estate. And that's important because a lot of people think, I don't need to do estate planning because I don't have a lot of assets. And you can see from Pete Seeger's example, he didn't have a lot either, and he still did a will. So Christina, if you could talk a little bit about why would he put his distributions to his children in a trust, and what does that mean, and why is that
Yeah,
important?
so oftentimes one of the things I ask my clients is about their children. Tell me about your children. Do they like to spend money? Are they married? Are we worried about divorce? So, preserving one's legacy and keeping it within the family is a huge reason why a lot of people do what we call lifetime trusts. They leave assets to their children in a lifetime trust, and then when their child passes, it goes down to their grandchildren. They preserve their, generational wealth, basically. A lot of times we want to make sure that the inheritance doesn't get commingled with marital property in event of divorce or even death. So there's many reasons why people have lifetime trust, even for bad decision making, being in a business and maybe the business, not doing well itself, and bankruptcy. People have bankruptcies. There's trust that could protect against all of those things. Also sometimes having it in a lifetime trust, there's trigger points that if, God forbid, a child, while they're healthy now, while you're doing your planning, maybe in the future becomes ill or starts to receive governmental benefits, that could trigger a subtrust so they don't lose governmental benefits. There's a lot of benefits to having that, but always making sure that there's somebody there, the trustee, to do that. Also touching a little bit on the specific bequest, I always tell my clients, yes, all your children may get along, but coming down to, the jewelry, the engagement ring, or something really that they want, even if it's not valuable but sentimental, and there's only one piece of it, they could fight and argue over it. So let's be specific in your documents and say, I give this to this person. As you know, Leslie, and a lot of my clients know, I always give my personal experience stories. So when my grandfather died, he was an avid comic book collector. He had these long boxes, probably a good 4-foot long, stuffed with comic books. And he had about, I would say, 20 of them. And he left in his will, wasn't a lawyer at that time, but he left in his will that I give my comic books to my grandchildren equally. And we said, what are we going to go through each box and look up the value of each comic book and try to figure this out? So we literally labeled the 20 things. We put numbers in a hat and we just picked, and we said, randomly. We were lucky enough that we got along, that we understood that to us it was just grandpa's things. But you have family members who may say, no, I want to go through that box, and maybe this comic book is worth 10,000 and the box I got was worth pennies. So it's really important to be specific, to really stop family fighting, we all hope that we never fight and that everyone loves each other and gets along, but we truly never know. So that's also very important.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, I think it's take the example from Christina's family story and Pete Seeger. When you're doing estate planning, if you have specific items that you want to go to people, it should definitely be in the will. Although Christina and I are working on a case where someone did a will and they did how many specific items are we talking? Like 30, 40, like a lamp and a table, and that really shouldn't be done in a will, because everybody who's named to receive that specific item now has to be involved in the court process, because remember, a will always has to go through court in order to be validated. So if there's 20 people that are receiving a gift through that will, those 20 people have to have an opportunity to come to court and claim it or reject it or whatever. This is a big burden for the family. So the better way to do it would have been for the family, the deceased person, to set up a trust and then have the trustee distribute it specifically, because a trust doesn't go through court and there's no notice requirements like there are with the will. Did I miss anything, Christina, that you think we should mention?
No, and I was going to say, even with the trust, it makes things easier, because sometimes people don't want things either. Something that I think is very valuable or sentimental may not be to the next person. Little things like we saying with the other client, we had couches and tables and end tables, people don't even want them. And, if we have it through a will, we have to get releases signed, at least saying that I don't want this item. I'm not going to go after the executor later on. So really trust, because they're private, there's no court involvement. There's a lot less oversight. It's easier for the fiduciary, the trustee, to take on. So when you're sitting with your parents or your loved ones or your spouses, think, what burden are we going to put on our children, later on, or our grandchildren?
Right. So that's Pete Seeger. Sorry to see he's gone. And again, the other reason that we know all of this is because he did a will. A will is a public document. It goes through the courts. We can see it. The newspapers can see it. So if you like privacy, you're not going to want to do a will. You're going to want to do a trust as well. So we're here if you have any questions. We hope you found this information useful, and we'll be on in a few weeks to tell you about another famous celebrity.
Yeah.